the moment my son's car disappeared into the fog, leaving me abandoned on that windswept cliff with nothing but an overnight bag I never packed, I realized my own children had just declared war on me. But what Nathan and Lily didn't know, what nobody knew, was that my late husband Thomas had spent 60 years preparing me for exactly this moment. Hidden in our bedroom was a cedared chest containing documents that would turn their carefully orchestrated betrayal into the biggest mistake of their lives. This is the story of how a 70-year-old widow fought back against her own children and won. My name is Evelyn Hart, and this is how I discovered that sometimes the people you trust most are the ones you need to fight hardest.
Chapter 1. The Car Ride After the Funeral. The fog rolls in from the Atlantic like a gray shawl, wrapping itself around the pine trees that line the coastal highway. I press my palm against the cool passenger window of Nathan's rental car and watch the familiar landmarks of my Maine coastline blur past. Weathered lobster shacks, stone walls from my grandmother's time, the turnoff to Miller's Point where Thomas proposed 43 years ago. "Mom, are you listening?" Nathan's voice cuts through my reverie, crisp and businesslike even on this day when we've just laid his father to rest. I turn to look at my eldest son, my boy who once built sandcastles with his father. At 45, Nathan has Thomas's strong jawline, but none of his gentle patience. His dark suit is perfectly pressed, his tie knotted with corporate precision. "I'm sorry, dear." "What were you saying?" "I was talking about next steps. We need to be practical about this, Mom. Dad wouldn't want us to drag our feet." Dad wouldn't want us. For 11 months, I was the one sitting beside Thomas's hospital bed, reading him Thoreau and Frost when the pain medications made him restless. I was the one who knew he wanted the windows open so he could hear the sea. What kind of next steps? Well, for starters, this whole bed and breakfast situation. Nathan takes the exit toward Port Wynne, our little town of 800 souls. The Hart house isn't sustainable for you anymore, Mom. You're 70. Dad handled all the business side, bookkeeping, maintenance, guest relations. That's a lot for one person. Through the windshield, I see our harbor coming into view, the lighthouse standing sentinel on the point like it has for 100 years. I've been thinking about this wonderful senior community about an hour inland, Sunset Manor. They have activities, book clubs, gardening groups, even a poetry circle. You'd love it, Mom. No more worrying about leaky faucets or difficult guests. I watch a seagull wheel overhead. Poetry circle. Exactly. You could read your Dickinson and Frost to people who actually appreciate it instead of... He gestures at the town below us. Well, instead of tourists who just want clean towels. I read to our guests because they enjoy it. Last month I had a young couple from Vermont. She was pregnant, and we spent 3 evenings by the fire reading The Road Not Taken. They sent me a card last week. The baby came early, and they named her Hope. Nathan's sigh is barely audible. That's lovely, Mom, but that's exactly what I mean. You're pouring your heart into strangers instead of taking care of yourself. We've reached the harbor now, and Nathan parks in front of coastal grounds. Through the clearing mist, I can see the Hart house perched on its gentle rise, a Victorian painted in soft yellow with white trim, its wraparound porch dotted with rocking chairs Thomas built by hand. Besides, and now I hear something sharper in his voice, we've already had some interest in the property. Waterfront, historic district, established business. There are buyers already circling, developers who see the potential for something really special. Developers? High-end resort development, boutique hotel maybe, a marina, the kind of thing that would really put Port Wynne on the map. His enthusiasm builds, and the numbers they're talking about, well, you'd never have to worry about money again. The word hits me like a physical blow. Property. Not home. Not the place where your father and I built our life together. Property. I notice how easily the word rolls off my son's tongue, as if the Hart house is nothing more than an asset to be liquidated. I wonder when I stopped recognizing this man who came from my body. Through the clearing fog, I can see Captain Merrick's weathered dory tied up at the dock. The same dock where Thomas first taught his children to cast a fishing line, where he and I would sit on summer evenings watching the sun paint the water gold. I think we should go home now. I need to check on the guest rooms for tomorrow's arrivals. Nathan frowns. Mom, you can't seriously be thinking of taking guests right now. Your father believed that hospitality was a sacred trust. Tomorrow, I'm expecting the Hendersons from New Hampshire. They've been coming for their anniversary every October for 12 years. As we drive up to the Hart house, I see the porch light Thomas always insisted we leave on. The yellow glow spills across the garden where his hands planted every rose bush, every stand of delphiniums. Hard decisions about the future, Nathan says. But as I step out of the car and breathe in the salt air that has been my companion for 70 years, I wonder if the hardest decision won't be about the future at all. It might be about what I'm willing to fight for from the past.
Chapter 2. Papers on the kitchen table. The morning after the funeral dawns gray and restless. I wake at 5:30. As I have every morning for 40 years, my body still turning toward the empty space where Thomas's warmth should be. For just a moment, that cruel, hopeful moment between sleep and consciousness, I forget. My hand reaches across the cool sheets, expecting to find his shoulder. But there is only silence and the steady tick of the grandfather clock. I wrap my quilted robe around my shoulders and pad downstairs. The Hart house settles around me with comfortable creaks, these walls having heard 43 years of my marriage, midnight feedings when the children were small, whispered arguments about money, Thomas reading the Portland Press Herald while I kneaded bread. The kitchen still smells faintly of yesterday's funeral reception, casseroles from neighbors, coffee cake from the general store. I put the kettle on and gaze toward the harbor, where fishing boats are heading out for their morning hauls. I'm arranging Thomas's nautical charts on the kitchen table when I hear the rental car. Through the lace curtains, I watch Lily emerge with practiced grace. Even at 7 in the morning, she's camera-ready, blonde hair and an artful bun, makeup perfect, her flowing cardigan managing to look both casual and expensive. My daughter, 42 years old, successful beyond anything Thomas and I could have imagined when she was collecting sea glass on our beach. She's built something remarkable in Los Angeles, a wellness brand called Coastal Calm, using images of Maine lighthouses to sell meditation apps to people who've never heard of foghorn. Nathan follows her up the porch steps, carrying an expensive briefcase that looks incongruous against my geranium planters. Morning, Mom. Lily kisses my cheek, and I catch her signature perfume, something citrusy that probably costs more than my monthly groceries. How did you sleep? Like the dead, I say, immediately regretting the phrase. But Lily's already arranging branded folders on the table next to Thomas's charts. The contrast strikes me. His hand-drawn notations and worn edges next to her sleek marketing materials. We've brought coffee, Nathan announces, and breakfast pastries. We thought we could talk through everything while we eat. Everything. I pour myself tea instead. My kitchen, my routine, my small rebellion. We've been doing some research, Lily begins, opening folders with a flourish, and we think we found the perfect solution. She spreads out glossy brochures for Sunset Manor, silver-haired people playing cards and tending supervised gardens, floor plans for studio apartments, activity calendars filled with bingo and crafts. Look at this dining room, Lily says. All your meals prepared by professional chefs. No more grocery shopping. No more cooking for crowds. You could spend your days reading, maybe starting that memoir you always talked about. I never talked about writing a memoir. Well, you should. And this is the creative suite. You could read poetry to other residents who appreciate literature. I study the photograph. A sterile room with institutional furniture and carefully arranged bookshelves. Nothing like the magical evenings here when guests gather by our fieldstone fireplace while I read Mary Oliver and the ocean whispers outside. The financial advantages are significant, Nathan adds, producing his folder. The equity in this place, plus what Dad had in savings, would cover the entrance fee and provide comfortable income for life. This place. Now Nathan's doing it too, reducing our home to a commodity. And here's the exciting part, Lily says, breathless with enthusiasm. We've been talking to a development group that specializes in boutique hospitality. They're envisioning something incredible, a luxury eco-resort that honors the natural beauty while providing world-class amenities. She produces an artist's rendering that takes my breath away. Where my Victorian cottage sits, where Thomas's gardens bloom, there's a sleek glass and cedar structure. The marina bristles with enormous yachts, and the shoreline has been transformed into manicured beach areas with cabanas and an infinity pool. They're calling it Harbor's Edge Sanctuary, high-end guests, spa services, farm-to-table dining, the kind of destination that would really put Port Wynne on the map. Port Wynne doesn't want to be on that kind of map. Mom, think about the jobs this would create, the economic impact. Some suites would rent for $1,000 a night. $1,000? Do you know what we charge for our nicest room? $125, including breakfast. And for that, our guests feel like family, not customers. Lily leans forward with her therapeutic voice. Mom, I know this feels overwhelming. Change is always hard, especially after loss. But Dad would want you to be practical. Your father loved this house. He spent 28 years making guests feel welcome, learning their names, remembering their anniversaries. Of course, Nathan says quickly, but he also understood business. In fact, he and I discussed some of these possibilities during his last few months. Something cold settles in my stomach. What kind of discussions? Nathan and Lily exchange a glance. Well, he knew he wouldn't be able to help much longer. We talked about options that would ensure your financial security. Show me. Nathan produces a document with official seals. Here's a transfer document Dad signed. It puts the property into both our names as co-executors, which gives us authority to handle the sale. The lawyer said it would make everything simpler. No legal complications for you. I take the document with trembling hands. The signature looks like Thomas's handwriting, but there's something shaky, uncertain that doesn't match the man who signed his name with confidence for 75 years. I want to see our family lawyer's copy. What? Nathan looks confused. Harold Wells has been our attorney for 20 years. If Thomas signed something this significant, Harold would have a copy. Lily's expression flickers. Actually, there was some issue with the filing system. The document was temporarily misfiled, but the county registrar has the official copy. Harold Wells has never misfiled anything in his life. Mom, Nathan says with an edge to his voice, we're trying to help you here. We've put a lot of time and energy into researching the best options. Outside, the wind picks up, and from the harbor comes the deep toll of the sea buoy bell, the sound that has marked time in Port Wynne for as long as anyone can remember. Thomas used to say that bell was the heartbeat of our town, calling ships safely home through fog and storm. I listened to its resonant voice, and something tilts inside me. A fundamental shift in how I see this conversation, these two people I raised and loved and trusted. Looking at my children's earnest faces, I realize I may need to learn the difference between true signals and false lights that lead vessels onto the rocks.
Chapter 3. The Key I Never Returned. The evening shadows stretched long across the harbor as I watched Nathan's rental car disappear around the bend toward town, where he and Lily have taken rooms at the Anchor Inn. They offered to stay here to help you through this difficult time, but I claimed the guest rooms were booked. A small lie that bought me something precious: solitude. The Hart house settles into evening quiet, floorboards releasing familiar sighs, windows rattling softly as October wind picks up. I move through rooms like a ship's captain, checking that all is secure. In the front parlor, I straighten the antimacassars on Thomas's reading chair, the leather wingback where he'd sit every evening, parsing weather reports on his shortwave radio. The chair still holds the impression of his body, a depression I haven't had the heart to smooth away. The disputed transfer document lies on the kitchen table, and I pick it up again, studying Thomas's signature in the lamplight. There's something about the pressure of the pen, the spacing of letters, that whispers wrong in a voice I can't identify. 9 o'clock was always our time. After dishes were done and guests settled, Thomas and I would sit on the back porch with coffee, watching the lighthouse beam sweep across dark water. Tonight, I carry my coffee alone, wrapping one of Thomas's fisherman's sweaters around my shoulders. The wool still carries traces of his scent: salt air and pipe tobacco and bay rum aftershave. Above me, stars emerge between clouds, the same constellations Thomas taught me to navigate by during evening sails when we pretended to be explorers charting unknown waters. Every sailor needs to know true north, Evie, especially when the compass starts spinning and you can't trust what you're seeing. The memory strikes with sudden clarity. Thomas always believed in preparation for storms, not just weather, but human tempests that could blow a life off course. I set down my coffee and head upstairs to our bedroom. In the back corner of Thomas's closet, behind winter boots and under photo albums, sits the cedar chest his grandfather made, a simple box secured with a brass lock older than I am. For years, Thomas called it his storm chest, a place for important documents safe from flood or fire. I reach into his navy peacoat and find the key, worn smooth by decades of his thumb, attached to a brass fob engraved with our wedding date. The lock opens with a soft click. Inside, manila folders hold expected documents, insurance policies, tax returns, warranties. But underneath, I find things that make my breath catch. The first is a digital recorder with masking tape bearing my name. For Evie, play only if. No explanation, but the weight carries implications I'm not ready to understand. Beneath lies a harbor use easement dated 1962, 3 years before we married. The name isn't Hart, it's Pemberton, my maiden name. According to the legal language, this grants exclusive rights to tidal areas and deep water access, rights that pass to E. Pemberton and her lawful heirs in perpetuity. I read and my hands shake. Thomas never mentioned buying property under my maiden name, yet here's my signature from 1962, granting rights I didn't know I possessed. The final item stops my heart. The original business license for Hart House Marine Services, dated 1979. Not our bed and breakfast license, but something older I'd forgotten existed. Before tourism discovered our coast, Thomas ran a small marina from our dock. I'd assumed the marine license had lapsed, but this document shows differently. According to fine print, Hart House Marine Services holds exclusive commercial rights to deep water access, rights that cannot be transferred without consent of both property owners. Both owners, Thomas and Evelyn Hart, equal partners in an enterprise I'd barely remembered. I sit surrounded by debris of a life I thought I knew completely. Outside, rain drives against windows and sheets that sound like handfuls of pebbles. The lighthouse beam sweeps past, illuminating documents in stark brightness before plunging everything back into shadow. With trembling fingers, I find the play button when Thomas's recorder. His voice emerges, weaker than I remember, but unmistakably him. Evie, my darling, if you're hearing this, the world has turned unkind, and you need to know what I should have told you long ago. The dock, our dock, is the spine of everything. The harbor use rights, the easement, the marine license, they're all in your maiden name because I knew that someday someone might try to take what we've built. Don't let 'em, love. You're stronger than they know, and you own more than they understand. The dock is our spine, Evie. Don't yield it. Static fills the speaker, then his voice returns, softer now. I'm sorry I never explained about the easement, about why I put everything in your name back then. I was young and probably too clever, but I wanted to protect you, protect us, protect this place we were building together. The lawyer said it would be safer this way, that if anything happened to me, if anyone tried to claim the waterfront right, you'd have legal standing they couldn't challenge. I hope you never need to use it, my love. But if you do, remember that you're not just Evelyn Hart, the innkeeper's widow. You're Evelyn Pemberton Hart, and you own the sea. The recording ends, leaving me alone with rain and wind and the stunning realization that my husband spent 60 years preparing for a battle he hoped I'd never fight. But thinking about Nathan's casual mention of buyers already circling and that artist's rendering of luxury yachts, I understand the storm Thomas anticipated has finally arrived. I gather the documents carefully, my movements deliberate despite adrenaline coursing through my veins. The harbor use easement, the marine license, the recorder with Thomas's voice, evidence of a truth my children don't know and their developers never suspected. Outside, the lighthouse beam makes another sweep, and I whisper a promise to its steady light. I will protect what you built, Thomas. I will protect what we built together. The words feel like an oath sworn to the tide itself. As I lock the documents back in the cedar chest, I realize that tomorrow will bring more than just my children's continued pressure. Tomorrow will bring war.
Chapter 4. The Leave Me Here Turnoff. Morning arrives gray and restless, the kind of October day when ocean and sky blend into a single pewter canvas. I wake with Thomas's recorded words echoing, "You own the sea." The phrase feels both empowering and surreal as I pad downstairs, the harbor easement and marine license tucked safely in the storm chest. Their existence is secret that sits warm in my chest like a banked coal. Nathan arrives promptly at 9, checking his phone before knocking. Always connected, always managing. He's traded yesterday's funeral suit for khakis and a navy blazer, the uniform of important business on a casual Tuesday. "Morning, Mom. Sleep well?" "Like a baby," I lie, though I spent half the night memorizing every inflection of Thomas's recording. "Where's Lily?" "Conference call with her West Coast team. Product launch." Nathan sets his briefcase on the kitchen table with authority. "But we talked this morning and we're both in agreement about next steps. We've arranged a tour of Sunset Manor this morning. The director, Mrs. Carmichael, is expecting us at 11. She's prepared a special presentation about their literary programs." "How thoughtful. And then?" Well, assuming you like what you see, and I'm confident you will, we can start the application process immediately. There's actually a studio apartment available in their thorough wing. Garden view, built-in bookshelves, even a small writing nook. Nathan spreads out floor plans and photographs enthusiastically. The apartment looks pleasant, safe, clean, designed for people whose adventures have ended. But studying the images, I notice call buttons by every chair, grab bars and bathrooms, windows that probably don't open for safety reasons. It's lovely, but I'm not sure I'm ready for such a big decision so soon after your father's passing. Nathan's expression shifts from enthusiasm to patient determination. Mom, I understand this feels sudden, but we can't afford to wait too long. The interest in the property is heating up, and if we want the best possible price... so this tour is contingent on my agreeing to sell the house. Not contingent, but practical. He leans forward with gentle firmness. The entrance fee at Sunset Manor is substantial, but the equity in this place will cover it completely. You get security and companionship, and Lily and I know you're taken care of. Taken care of. As if I'm a problem to be solved rather than a person with will and wishes. What if I said no? The question hangs like morning fog. Nathan blinks, clearly unprepared for this objection. No to the tour? No to all of it. The apartment, the sale, the whole plan you and Lily have constructed for my future. For a moment, my confident son looks like the little boy who used to come to me with scraped knees. Then his business mask slides back, and I see something harder, something that reminds me of his ex-wife's lawyer during their divorce. Mom, I think you're still in shock. You're not thinking clearly about what's best for your long-term well-being. I'm thinking very clearly, perhaps more clearly than I have in months. Are you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're trying to cling to a life that's no longer sustainable. You're 70 years old, recently widowed, trying to run a business that requires strength and energy you simply don't have. Each word lands like a small slap, aimed at my deepest fears about aging, about being alone, about becoming a burden. But underneath the sting, I hear desperation. Nathan needs me to agree, and I'm beginning to understand why. Tell me about these buyers, the developers. What about them? Are they paying you a finder's fee, a commission for delivering the property? Mom, that's not relevant to your decision about future care. Answer the question. Silence stretches like a taut rope. Finally, Nathan closes the folder and stands. I think you need time to process. Why don't we take that drive? Sometimes seeing options in person helps clarify things. All right, I say, surprising him. Let's go. But as I reach for my coat, I slip the original doc license into my pocket, a talisman, a reminder that I am not as powerless as everyone believes. The drive takes us along the coastal highway, past familiar landmarks that have marked my life for 70 years. The general store where Thomas and I bought our first groceries as newlyweds, the church where we married and buried him, the elementary school where I taught Nathan and Lily to love literature during summer visits. Beautiful country, Nathan says as we wind through pine and maple. I'd forgotten how spectacular October can be. Your father always said October was when Maine shows her true colors, not just the leaves, but the character of the place. The tourists are gone, locals are preparing for winter, and everything becomes more honest. Honest, Nathan repeats, testing the word's weight. No pretense, no performance, just what is. Then Nathan takes a turn I don't expect, not towards Sunset Manor, but to a narrow road leading to Miller's Point, where Thomas proposed 43 years ago. Where are we going? I thought we might stop here first, get some perspective. The road climbs through scrub pine, emerging at a gravel turnout high above the ocean. This is where young couples watch sunsets, where Thomas knelt and asked me to share his life, and a voice shaking with hope. Nathan parks facing the ocean and turns off the engine. Below, waves crash with eternal rhythm. The view is spectacular. Miles of open ocean, the distant smudge of an island, our lighthouse standing sentinel. It really is beautiful, Nathan says softly. I can see why you and Dad loved it here. Can you? Of course. He reaches into the back seat and retrieves my overnight bag, packed, I realize with alarm, without my knowledge, and which I think you'll understand that what I'm about to say comes from love. Wind rattles the car windows. Nathan's knuckles are white on the steering wheel. You're not going to Sunset Manor for a tour, Mom. You're going to stay there, at least temporarily, while Lily and I handle the sale and get your affairs in order. Nathan, it's for your own good. You're clearly not thinking rationally, and we can't watch you make decisions that will hurt your security. He squeezes my hand with what might be meant as reassurance, but feels like restraint. Mrs. Carmichael is expecting you for an extended stay. She understands you're going through a difficult adjustment period. You mean you've told her I'm incompetent? I've told her you're grieving and need support while your family handles complex legal matters, which is true. The pieces fall into place with sickening clarity. The overnight bag, the definitive language about selling the house, the timing that separates me from my home just as the development deal requires my cooperation. And if I refuse? Nathan's smile is gentle but implacable. Mom, you're 70 years old. If you're not capable of making rational decisions about your welfare, there are legal mechanisms to ensure you're protected from yourself. Legal mechanisms. Conservatorship. The systematic removal of agency from people deemed too old or confused. I think of Thomas's voice. You're stronger than they know, and you own what they understand. You've thought this through very carefully. We had to. We love you too much to let you hurt yourself out of misplaced stubbornness. Nathan opens his door, and October wind rushes in, carrying salt tang and wild gull cries. He walks around and opens wide door with courtly politeness. Come on, Mom, let's get you somewhere safe. But as I step onto wind-swept gravel, the dock license crinkles in my pocket, and I think of Thomas's words about storms and survival. My son may have planned carefully, but he's made one crucial mistake. He's underestimated what a 70-year-old woman might be capable of when her back is against the wall and she has nothing left to lose. It's kinder this way, Nathan says, setting my bag between us. We'll handle the closing, take care of all the details. You won't have to worry about anything. I watch his taillights disappear into gray mist, leaving me alone on the cliff with wind and sea and growing certainty that my son has just made the worst mistake of his very successful life. Above me, gulls wheel and cry, their voices sharp with ancient wisdom. I pick up my overnight bag, check that the dock license is secure in my pocket, and start walking toward town, toward home, toward the fight that Thomas spent 60 years preparing me to win.
Chapter 5. The Lighthouse and the Letter. The walk back to town takes nearly an hour, my sensible shoes crunching on gravel while October wind whips through my hair and sets my coat flapping. But I am not surrendering. With each step along the familiar coastal road, past weathered stone walls and wild rose hips, I feel something awakening that's been dormant too long, the fierce protectiveness of a woman defending her nest. 3 cars pass me, and all slow with offers of help. This is Maine, where you don't leave a 70-year-old woman walking alone without good reason. But I wave them on with smiles, claiming I'm just getting some air. The truth that my own son abandoned me here like an unwanted pet seems too raw for casual conversation. By the time I reach Harbor Street, my cheeks burn from wind and my shoulder aches from Nathan's presumptuous overnight bag. The Hart house comes into view as I round the curve, and my heart lifts at the sight of the yellow Victorian perched like a hopeful beacon above the harbor. But I'm not ready to go home yet. There's someone I need to see first, someone who knew Thomas longer than anyone except me, someone who might understand what my husband was preparing for. Captain Merrick's cottage sits at the end of Anchor Lane, a neat salt box painted soft blue-gray. Smoke rises from his chimney, and his weathered dory sits pulled up on the shingle beach, secured against the approaching storm with practiced efficiency. I find him in his workshop, hunched over a half-built lobster trap with focused attention. Despite being 83, Samuel Merrick moves with economy of motion from a lifetime of useful work. His hands, gnarled but sure, adjust wooden slats with ship's carpenter precision. "Evelyn Hart," he says without looking up, "heard you had some excitement this morning." In a town of 800, news travels faster than October wind. I set down my bag and settle onto the wooden stool beside his workbench, grateful for warmth from his small wood stove. "Sam, I need to ask you something about Thomas. About the early days, before we were married." Now he looks up, blue eyes sharp despite their web of wrinkles. "What kind of something?" I pull the harbor easement from my pocket and spread it on his workbench, watching his expression change as he recognizes the document. Relief crosses his weathered features. "So you found it. Tom was worried you never would, that you'd sell the place without knowing what you really owned." "You knew about this?" "I helped him file it." Sam sets down his tools and turns to face me fully. 1962, right after your engagement. Tom came to me. I was harbor master then, knew all the regulations. He was worried about development pressure even back then. Smart man, your husband. He could see which way the wind was blowing. "But why in my maiden name?" Captain Merrick's smile carries the weight of old friendships. "Because Tom understood Maine law. Easement rights granted to a woman before marriage stay with her individually. Can't be touched by her husband's creditors or business dealings. And if she dies, they pass to her children, but only if she chooses to will them that way." The implications hit like a cold wave. He was protecting the waterfront from Nathan and Lily. He was protecting it, period. Tom never said much about your children's feelings toward this place, but he wasn't blind. He knew they saw dollar signs where he saw home. I pull out the marine license. "There's this, too." Sam whistles low. "Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. He kept the commercial dock rights? You didn't know about this one?" "I knew he had them, helped him get licensed in '79 when he was running that fuel dock, but I figured he'd let them lapse when we switched to the bed and breakfast." Sam studies the document intently. "This changes everything, Evelyn. These rights are grandfathered under old coastal development laws. Anyone wanting to build a marina would need your permission, and they'd have to lease access through your dock. The developers Nathan mentioned would be dead in the water without this license, literally. No commercial marina, no luxury yacht services, no waterfront resort worth the money they're probably promising your children." I feel savage satisfaction imagining Nathan's face when he discovers his plan has a fatal flaw. But the feeling is quickly replaced with gratitude for a husband who spent 60 years thinking 3 steps ahead. "Sam, there's something else. Thomas left me a recording." I pull out the digital device, and Captain Merrick listens with growing amazement as Thomas's voice fills the workshop, speaking words of love and strategy, preparation and protection. When the recording ends, Sam stares out the window toward the harbor. "That man was the finest sailor I ever knew. Not because he could handle a boat in rough seas, though he could, but because he understood that real storms come from directions you don't expect, and the only way to survive is to be ready for anything." "I need help, Sam. Nathan and Lily are trying to have me declared incompetent. They want to sell the house and put me in a nursing home while they profit from some development deal." Captain Merrick's expression hardens like granite. "Over my dead body." "What do I do?" "First, we call Harold Wells. If your children are playing games with forged documents, Harold needs to know immediately. Second, we file to freeze any sale until this gets sorted out legally. And third,
He pauses, studying my face with careful attention. Third, we let the developers know exactly what kind of obstacles they're facing. How? By sending them copies of these documents, along with a nice letter from Harold explaining that any marina development requires consent of the holder of the commercial dock license, namely one Evelyn Pemberton Hart, who has no intention of cooperating with anyone trying to steal her home. For the first time since Thomas's funeral, I feel hope blooming in my chest. You really think we can stop them? Honey, I've seen nor'easters that couldn't stop your husband when he set his mind to something, and from what I can tell, you inherited more than just his house. He reaches for his phone with hands that may be arthritic but remain steady. Harold, it's Sam Merrick here, and I've got Evelyn Hart here, and we need to see you right away. Seems her children are trying to pull a fast one. As Captain Merrick talks, I listen to wind rattling his workshop windows and think about storms, the ones Thomas taught me to navigate by stars, and the human tempests that require different kinds of preparation entirely. Outside, afternoon light fades toward early October dusk, but inside this warm workshop, surrounded by tools of honest work and wisdom of old friendships, I feel more capable than I have in months. The battle isn't over, but I'm no longer fighting it alone.
Chapter 6. Their panic, my calm. By 6 o'clock that evening, my phone has become a weapon of electronic warfare. It began with a single text from Lily. "Mom, where are you? Sunset Manor called." Innocent enough, almost motherly in its concern, but within an hour, the messages escalate like a storm building offshore. "The facility is worried. Please call." "Nathan said you walked away? This isn't like you." "Mom, we're trying to help. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I ignore them all, sitting instead in Thomas's reading chair with a cup of chamomile tea, watching the harbor lights come on one by one as darkness settles over Port Wynne. The lighthouse beam sweeps across the water with its eternal rhythm, and I find myself counting the intervals between its flashes. 3 seconds of light, 7 seconds of darkness, 3 seconds of light. Steady as a heartbeat, reliable as the tides. At 7:15, my phone rings. Lily's photo appears on the screen, the professional headshot from her website, all perfect teeth and California sunshine. I let it go to voicemail, then listen to her message with the detached interest of an anthropologist studying a foreign species. "Mom, I'm really concerned about your behavior today. This isn't rational thinking, it's grief making poor decisions for you. We've invested significant time and resources in finding you appropriate care, and frankly, your refusal to cooperate is becoming problematic. There are people depending on this transition happening smoothly. Call me back immediately." People depending on this transition, not "we're worried about you" or "we want what's best for your future." People depending on the sale of my home, on my removal from the equation, on my quiet cooperation with plans made without my consent. The next call comes from Nathan, his voice tight with barely controlled frustration. "Mom, this is ridiculous. You can't just disappear when we're trying to handle important legal matters. The buyers are asking questions, and we need your signature on several documents. Whatever game you're playing, it stops now. I'm driving up from Portland, and we're going to resolve this tonight." Game. As if my resistance to being institutionalized is some kind of elderly petulance rather than a rational response to betrayal. But it's the third message that tells me Harold Wells has been busy this afternoon. Nathan's voice is different now, sharper with an edge of something that might be panic. "Mom, I just got a very confusing call from some lawyer claiming there are irregularities with Dad's estate documents. This is exactly the kind of confusion we were trying to avoid by handling everything ourselves. Call me back so we can clear this up." I smile,
sipping my tea and watching a lobster boat navigate the channel markers with practiced ease. Harold Wells doesn't make confusing calls. Harold Wells makes precisely clear calls that leave no room for misinterpretation. If Nathan is confused, it's because Harold has just informed him that his carefully constructed plan has some very large holes. At 8 o'clock, Lily abandons the pretense of maternal concern entirely. Her text message arrives in capital letters. "Mom, answer your phone. The investors are asking about zoning complications. What did you do?" What did I do? I defended my home with weapons my late husband spent 60 years forging in secret. I used legal documents filed in my maiden name to protect property rights my children never knew existed. I chose to fight rather than submit to being managed like an inconvenient piece of furniture. The phone rings again. Nathan, his third attempt in 2 hours. This time I answer, letting his worried voice fill Thomas's quiet study. "Mom, thank God. Where have you been?" "Home," I say simply. "Where did you think I'd be?" "I thought Sunset Manor said you never arrived. I was worried something had happened to you." "Something did happen to me, Nathan. My son tried to have me committed to a nursing home against my will based on legal documents that our family attorney says show signs of forgery." The silence stretches across the phone line like a taut rope. When Nathan speaks again, his voice carries the careful precision of a man walking through a minefield. "Mom, nobody's trying to commit you anywhere. We're trying to ensure your safety and financial security. And as for forgery, that's a very serious accusation." "Yes, it is." "Dad signed those documents voluntarily. If Harold Wells is suggesting otherwise, he's mistaken." "Harold isn't suggesting anything, Nathan. Harold is stating facts. The signature analysis shows irregularities consistent with someone signing under the influence of strong medication. The witnesses listed weren't present when the documents were allegedly signed. And most interestingly, the notary stamp shows a date when your father was in the hospital, unconscious from morphine." The silence this time is profound, broken only by the sound of Nathan's careful breathing and the distant toll of the sea buoy bell. When he finally speaks, his voice has changed completely. No more patient son managing a difficult parent, but a businessman whose carefully constructed deal has just encountered an unexpected obstacle. "What do you want?" "I want you and Lily to go back to your respective lives and leave me to live mine as I see fit. I want all talk of nursing homes and property sales to end immediately. And I want an apology for the lie you told today about taking me on a tour. And if we refuse, then you'll discover that a 70-year-old woman with nothing left to lose can be a very formidable opponent." I hang up before he can respond, then turn off the phone entirely. Outside, the lighthouse beam continues its eternal sweep, guiding ships safely through treacherous waters. In the kitchen, I can hear the gentle hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the wall clock, all the quiet sounds of a house that knows it's secure. For the first time since Thomas's funeral, I sleep deeply and dreamlessly, wrapped in quilts that smell like home and protected by legal documents that make me, as my husband's recording promised, stronger than they know. Tomorrow will bring new battles, but tonight I am exactly where I belong.
Chapter 7. The Town Weighs the Truth. The Port Wind Community Center hasn't seen this much excitement since the Great Lobster Trap controversy of 2018. By 6:30 on Thursday evening, every folding chair is occupied, and latecomers line the walls like sentries. The air thrums with nervous energy and the kind of anticipation that comes when a small town senses that something important hangs in the balance. I arrive early, settling into a front row seat with the calm deliberation of a woman who knows she holds the winning hand. Mayor Ortiz had called this emergency hearing after Harold Wells filed a formal objection to any property transfers involving waterfront development rights. "The community deserves to understand what's being proposed," she denounced, though we both know the real purpose: to let the people of Port Wynne decide what kind of future they want for their harbor. Captain Merrick sits beside me, wearing his good wool coat and the dignified bearing of a man who spent 83 years earning his neighbor's respect. Behind us, I hear familiar voices. Meredith from the general store, discussing the implications for local businesses. Frank Delacroix, wondering aloud about property taxes if luxury developments drive up land values. Mrs. Chen, who runs the bait shop, asking her husband what happens to working waterfront if it gets turned into yacht clubs. At precisely 7 o'clock, Mayor Ortiz calls the meeting to order. Carmen Ortiz has been our mayor for 12 years, a former teacher who approaches town politics with the patience of someone accustomed to managing competing interests. Tonight, however, even her usual diplomatic composure shows strain. "Before we begin," she announces, "I want everyone to understand that this is not a formal hearing on any specific development proposal. We're here to discuss the future of our waterfront and how the community wants to approach preservation versus development. But everyone knows we're really here because of me, because of the Hart House, because of the battle between a widow and her children that has somehow become a referendum on the soul of our little town." The first speaker is David Morrison, a summer resident from Boston whose family has vacationed here for 30 years. He speaks eloquently about the need for thoughtful development that enhances rather than overwhelms the natural character of the area. His words are careful, diplomatic, but I hear the underlying message. Development is inevitable, so let's make sure it's expensive enough to keep out the wrong sort of people. Then comes Agnes Whitmore, whose family has fished these waters for 4 generations. She speaks in the clipped cadences of old Maine, each word measured and deliberate. "My grandfather could haul his traps from that dock when he was courting my grandmother. My father taught my brothers to read weather signs from that point. If we turn our working waterfront into a playground for rich folks' boats, we lose more than just a pretty view. We lose who we are." One by one, townspeople rise to speak. Some favor development. The owner of the hardware store talks about economic opportunities. The manager of the seasonal restaurant chain mentions job creation, but more speak against it. Their voices carry the weight of generations tied to this place by more than just economic convenience. Then Sarah Fletcher stands, a young mother whose family I sheltered 3 years ago when a nor'easter knocked out power to half the town. She speaks softly, almost shyly, but her words carry across the room with surprising force. "Mrs. Hart took us in when we had nowhere else to go. Our baby was only 6 months old and the power was out for 4 days. She didn't just give us a room, she made us family. She read stories to our older daughter by candlelight, made soup on her wood stove, taught my husband how to split kindling properly." Sarah's voice grows stronger. "That's what this place is about. Not luxury, not profit. Kindness, community. People taking care of each other because it's the right thing to do." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. I feel my throat tighten with unexpected emotion. Remembering that storm, that frightened young family, the way their little girl had fallen asleep in my lap while I read Goodnight Moon by flickering candlelight. At 7:45, the community center door opens, and Nathan and Lily slip inside like late-arriving theater patrons, hoping not to disturb the performance. They find seats in the back, their city clothes and tense expressions marking them as outsiders in this room full of neighbors. The discussion continues for another 20 minutes, passionate but civil. The kind of democratic discourse that happens when people truly care about the outcome. Finally, Mayor Ortiz calls for the main presentation. "We have a proposal," she announces, "from the Coastal Heritage Trust, working in partnership with Mrs. Hart and her legal counsel,
for a permanent conservation easement that would protect the waterfront while preserving existing residential and hospitality uses. Harold Wells rises from his seat in the second row, carrying a folder thick with legal documents. His presentation is clear and methodical. The easement would place the shoreline and dock under permanent conservation protection, preventing large-scale development while allowing me to continue operating the Hart House as a bed and breakfast. The marine license would remain with the property, ensuring that any future commercial water access serves the community rather than private luxury interest. This proposal, Harold concludes, preserves jobs for local fishermen, maintains affordable visitor accommodations, and protects the character of Port Wind's waterfront in perpetuity. The applause is immediate and sustained, but as it dies down, I hear Nathan's voice from the back of the room, tight with controlled frustration. "Excuse me, but shouldn't the property owner's family have some say in decisions that affect our inheritance?" The room falls silent. Mayor Ortiz's expression remains diplomatically neutral, but I can see the discomfort in her eyes. "Mr. Hart, you're certainly welcome to speak, but I should point out that your mother is the sole owner of the property in question, and she has the legal right to make whatever disposition she chooses." Nathan stands, his business suit looking increasingly out of place among the flannel shirts and practical jackets of working people. "My sister and I are concerned that our mother is being influenced by parties who may not have her best interests at heart. She is recently widowed, clearly grieving, and may not be in the best position to make irrevocable decisions about substantial assets." A murmur of disapproval runs through the crowd. Not loud, but unmistakable. In Maine, you don't publicly question someone's competence without very good reason, and you certainly don't do it about a woman who's been a respected member of the community for 28 years. I rise slowly, feeling the weight of 70 years and the strength of a lifetime spent in this place among these people. When I speak, my voice carries clearly to every corner of the room. My son seems to believe that grief has clouded my judgment, but I want you all to know that I've never seen more clearly than I do right now. This town, this harbor, this community, you have been my family for nearly 30 years. You've celebrated with me, mourned with me, supported me through my husband's illness. You are why I want to protect this place from becoming just another luxury destination for people who see beauty as something to be consumed rather than cherished. The applause this time is thunderous, and I see Nathan's face flush with what might be embarrassment or anger. Lily remains seated, her expression unreadable, but I notice her phone in her lap, fingers moving rapidly across the screen. When the meeting ends 40 minutes later, the vote is overwhelmingly in favor of the conservation easement. As people file out, many stop to shake my hand, to express their support, to share memories of stays at the Hart House or kindnesses Thomas and I showed over the years. Nathan and Lily approach as the crowd thins, their faces drawn and tense. But before they can speak, Mayor Ortiz intercepts them with the practiced diplomacy of someone who's defused many family conflicts in public settings. "Perhaps," she suggests gently, "this conversation would be better continued privately." As we gather our coats and prepare to leave, I realize that something fundamental has shifted tonight. For the first time since Thomas's funeral, I feel truly seen.
not as an aging widow to be managed, but as a woman with agency, with community, with the absolute right to determine her own future. The story, as Nathan might say, is no longer his to narrate.
Chapter 8, The Tide That Stays. 3 weeks later, on a crisp November morning when frost glitters like scattered diamonds on the dormant garden, I signed the conservation easement with Harold Wells witnessing and Captain Merrick standing by like a proud grandfather. The document that will outlive us all rests on Thomas's oak dining table, surrounded by the detritus of our legal victory. Court orders voiding the forged transfer, cease and desist letters to the development company, and a formal opinion from the State Attorney General's office confirming my exclusive rights to the waterfront. The investigation into the disputed documents had been swift and thorough. Nathan's carefully constructed deception unraveled like a poorly tied knot. Witnesses who were never present, a notary who had been vacationing in Florida when the documents were allegedly signed, handwriting analysis that showed Thomas's signature had been traced over with a different pen. The court didn't just void the transfer. Judge Morrison used words like unconscionable fraud and elder abuse that will follow my children for years to come. Lily flew back to California the day after the town meeting. Her departure preceded by a text message that managed to be both vindictive and self-pitying. "I hope you're happy with what you've chosen, Mom. Some of us have real responsibilities and can't afford to indulge in sentiment." No apology. No acknowledgement of wrongdoing. Just the wounded righteousness of someone who believes good intentions justify any means. Nathan lasted longer, taking a room at the Anchor Inn for a week while his lawyers explored options that didn't exist. He visited twice, both times bringing coffee from the chain place and speeches about family loyalty that rang hollow in the kitchen where Thomas had taught him to tie sailing knots and where I had bandaged his childhood scrapes. "You've destroyed our relationship," he said during his final visit, standing by the window that looks out over the harbor where fishing boats still work the waters his grandfather charted. "I've preserved my independence," I replied, surprised by how little his anger affected me. "You destroyed our relationship when you decided I was incompetent to manage my own life." He left without saying goodbye, but not before I saw him take one last look around the kitchen, perhaps remembering when this had been home, rather than just valuable real estate.
The developer, Harbor's Edge Luxury Properties, withdrew their offer within days of learning about the marine license restrictions. Their lawyers had done due diligence on zoning and building codes, but apparently hadn't considered that someone might actually own the water itself. The irony wasn't lost on me. In their hurry to circumvent the property owner they assumed was a pushover, they'd overlooked the legal obstacles that made their project impossible. This morning, as Harold packs up his papers and Captain Merrick shares coffee and stories about Thomas's younger days, I feel the profound satisfaction of a woman who has won more than just a legal battle. I've reclaimed my agency, my dignity, and my right to determine how my own story ends. The Hart House phone rings as we're finishing our coffee, a reservation call from a couple in Vermont who want to spend Thanksgiving weekend watching storms from our front porch. I take their information with the practiced efficiency of someone who intends to be welcoming guests for years to come, then add their names to the leather-bound reservation book Thomas started in 1997. After Harold and Sam leave, I walk down to the dock where Thomas proposed all those years ago. The November air carries the sharp clarity that comes after the first frost, and the harbor water reflects the sky like hammered pewter. A few lobster boats work the distant waters, their captains checking traps one last time before winter forces them to haul their gear. The dock feels solid beneath my feet, weathered but sound, built by Thomas's hands to last through decades of storms. This simple wooden structure that my children saw as an inconvenience is actually the foundation of everything. The marine license that stopped the development, the harbor rights that protected our home, the commercial access that gives me leverage over anyone who wants to change the character of our waterfront. I pull out my phone and scroll to a video message Lily posted yesterday. Another meditation about letting go of toxic relationships and choosing growth over stagnation. The irony stings. My daughter, who built a fortune teaching others about mindfulness and coastal calm, couldn't see that those qualities already existed in the place where she was raised. But I don't dwell on their absence. Instead, I think about Sarah Fletcher's words at the town meeting, about the family I sheltered during the storm, about all the guests over the years who found refuge and renewal in the rooms Thomas and I prepared with such care. That legacy doesn't require my children's understanding or approval. It simply requires my continued presence and commitment. As the afternoon light begins to slant toward evening, I walk back to the house and settle on the front porch with a cup of tea and a worn copy of Mary Oliver's poems. Tonight, the Hendersons from New Hampshire will arrive for their annual anniversary celebration, and tomorrow I'll read to them by the fire while November wind rattles the windows and reminds us all how precious it is to have a warm, welcoming place to weather whatever storms may come. The lighthouse beam begins its evening sweep across waters that will remain protected long after I'm gone. In my pocket, I carry the deed to the conservation easement, legal proof that some things matter more than profit, that home isn't just a place you can sell, but a sanctuary you're called to defend. I open to a favorite poem and read aloud to the gathering dusk. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? The words drift out over the harbor where Thomas's spirit seems to linger in every familiar landmark, every carefully tended memory. My wild and precious life has brought me to this moment, 70 years old, widowed but not defeated, alone but not abandoned, victorious in ways my children will never understand. I am home. My love is not noise. It is a light that does not go out. And the tide, as Thomas always promised, has finally turned in my favor.
Thank you for joining us on Evelyn's remarkable journey of courage and resilience. Her story proves that sometimes our greatest battles come from the most unexpected places, but with preparation, community, and an unshakable sense of what truly matters, we can weather any storm. Until next time, remember, you are stronger than you know, braver than you believe, and more capable than you imagine. Just like Evelyn, you have the power to write your own ending. How did you find today's story? Please let us know in the comments where you are right now and what you're doing while listening to this. Are you at home, on a walk, or perhaps keeping someone company during a quiet evening? We're curious about your stories too, and we love hearing how these tales touch your lives. And if Evelyn's story moved you, if it reminded you of your own strength or inspired you to stand up for what you believe in, please give us a like and share this story with someone who might need to hear it. Perhaps a friend facing their own challenges, or someone who would appreciate being reminded of their own resilience. Subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Thank you so much for spending this time with us today. And may you never underestimate the power of your own courage or the strength that comes from knowing exactly where you belong.